afternoon, we'll be holding concert series until the first Friday of November, and each of these series will be done in order to raise money for Youth Haven. So I just want to thank you right off the bat for all coming out to support such a wonderful cause in our community. You're in for a unique experience for our first concert, I think, because you're all going to get about 2,000 years worth of history, just sung at you. Okay? So we're going to be starting at the very, very beginning of the Bible. We're going to work our way through. We're going to talk about that period in between Old and New Testament when all sorts of stuff happens and you get to the New Testament, you're not really sure why it's different than it was in the Old Testament. You're now going to know those things. You're going to hear about all of those people in the Gospels that are historical figures, but you might not know too much about outside of the story. You're going to learn all about them. And then you're going to get a walkthrough of Anglican history and church theology. So, wow. I apologize to you all right off the bat for that. The way that we're doing this, though, is to the tunes of Gilbert and Sullivan, which is why this is called Topsy-Turvy Theology. Topsy-turvy is how Gilbert used to describe their operas, that they were all rooted in topsy-turvydom. So because I've taken that music and I've rewritten the lyrics to it, I've decided that this is Topsy-Turvy Theology. And the way that we start Topsy-Turvy Theology is the way that you start the Bible. You start at the beginning. When we start at the beginning, there were 7 crucial days. Though without celestial bodies, time for 4 was in a haze. That same week, our garden life, then the fruit which brought our strife, then a sacrifice and murder where a curse against the herd. That first generation had its ups and downs, till the whole of Cain's descendants would become the key defendants when the trial of the flood would all drown. From the ark into the tower, Noah's in, when we tried to build the world up once again. But when ears and tongues could not communicate, the advancement of the species had to wait. And from Abraham to Sarah, Isaac, Rebecca, and the kids comes the meaning of the air promise of a land and day. When they baby they're divesting and defending, got depressing all its neighbors, suddenly ceasing to their slavery they're in. So that generations later, Moses came as liberator, reconnecting people once again to God and to God. With the law and with the reason they then wandered for a season until across the Jordan, led by Joshua, they freely trod. The Old Testament tale leaves all the stories tale. It connects us to our past and lets us see how far we've gone. But the thing to grasp and treasure and to never cease to measure is the way in which the story that we find is moving on. The Old Testament tale leaves all the stories pale. It connects us to our past and lets us see how far we've gone. But the thing to grasp and treasure and to never cease to measure is the way in which the story that we find is moving on. The promised land was settled amongst the locals firmly nailed. Judges rose were needed to protect the law. When from out of Homer's dreams the Philistines flowed in streams with an urge to conquer everything they saw. Then the people rose and let their voices ring, urging endlessly to God to grant a king, which God granted, telling Samuel to bring to the people what he thought a wretched thing. And from Saul to Zedekiah, generations of Messiah, to a varying degree prove God's reluctance to be right. From kingdoms once united to divided rivals, blighted by the nations with imperial ambitions in their sight. First Assyria was plucky unto Babylon, got lucky, bringing pretending exile was the way between the two. Till the Medes / the Persians rose and often led reversion to permission to rebuild the temple and begin anew. The Old Testament tale leaves all other stories pale. It connects us to our past and lets us see how far we've gone. But the thing to grasp and treasure and to never cease to measure is the way in which the story that we find is moving on. The Old Testament tale leaves all other stories pale. It connects us to our past and lets us see how far we've gone. The thing to grasp and treasure and to never cease to measure is the the end of what we would call the Old Testamental era. But then there's this middle section where all sorts of things change. You know, we leave the Old Testament and the Persians are in control. That did not last too long in history, as you might know. When the great Alexander brought all of the East under Hellenic thought occupation, and the heirs to his generals managed the beast with a militaristic fixation, they determined their culture should come to replace every local expression all over the place, so that all of their lands should appear on the face to be fully, completely Hellenic. Now a century and a half passed before this came to threaten God's people and temple, when Antiochus Epiphanes felt remiss and determined to make an example. He abolished the practice laid out in the law, such as circumcision of the grisly last straw. Was he hung babes who were round the necks of their maws for not being completely Hellenic? When he placed in the temple a statue of Zeus that bore his own face as model, a fire was lit on that set chaos loose, with rebellions beginning to toddle. He dreamed to assimilate all he could see, discovering just how hard such things can be, when he lost to those brothers they called Maccabee, who drove from the land the Hellenics. The Maccabees were priestly clad, both zealous and devout, and when Seleucid bands came to persecute the land, they threw the tyrants out. Guerrilla war worked effectively as they ordering the temple directively and forging friends and allies prospectively, establishing a Hasmonean dynasty. But liberty was a mystery, the dynasty in history, for power with consistory, or the course of the testament history. But as the rule of the line wore on, they lost their old devotion, until dynastic strife came to dominate their life. Factions raised commotions. Their feuds invited the Romans in. From there their own ending did begin. In the end, though neither Hasmonean side would win, but the Herods much to everybody's own chagrin. Then liberty is mystery, left dynasty in history, who lost power of consistory at the end of their testament history. One of the things that going over this period in biblical history offers is perspective, actually. You hear in a lot of these scenarios something that we are seeing play out right now. So it is really, really, I think, even as fun as we're all having, useful for us to remember and to hear and to think about how long this story has been going on. About the factions, about the divisions, about the struggles for God's land. These factions, they drove the people apart. So much so that they started to civil war against one another. And eventually, they got the Romans to come in and side with them. And the Romans, like all good conquerors, once they were in, they just never leave. And that intensified the divide between the people. Just like our own time, you saw factions against factions against factions against factions against factions. You see that in the New Testament. Think about those people, the Sadducees, the Pharisees, all of those people. Those are the factions that were dividing Jerusalem. When Romans ruled and factions high, the Sadducees between them thrive, who ruled the temple, kept the law, and grabbed whatever power they saw. The great debate that went all around was, where do we go and why death were found? The Sadducees answered, into the ground, where only decay and worms are found. Unique to them, and one of the practical did condemn those architects of their raven, the factions divine Jerusalem. The Pharisees were on the ground, their power base was everywhere found. Around the law they built up a fence and railed against the Roman presence. Open to freedom, fighting goals, affirming immortality of souls, but pushing back these existing controls sometimes turned them into rigid a-holes. An outcome not unique to them, but what every other group did condemn. Those architects of their mayhem, the factions dividing Jerusalem. We will not of the essence be long, they stayed away that desert drum. But if you'd like to know those souls, then take a peek at the Dead Sea Scrolls. The zealots are our last entries, who pledged to never bend their knees and waged a war against Roman sleeves, though merely as violent Pharisees. The temple fell because of them, to death for each other and then condemned. Just Romans gained from this mayhem, those factions divided Jerusalem. So this is one of the weird elements about this kind of first century place within the Holy Land. Those factions were the people who, they're the leadership of the people, right? There was also the Romans, who were the kind of imperial overlords of the people. But the Romans didn't really deal directly so much with the factions as much as they did with the monarchy that they put in. They took a group of well, essentially non-Jews, and decided to make one of them the king. And that dynasty wound up ruling for more or less 100 years or so. You might recognize the name Herod. There are many, many different people who bear that name in the New Testament, though. So you never know which one's which. You're going to know which one's which now. Throughout the New Testament, Herods are named, but not all of them the same. Each lashes out violently when they're inflamed. These different men all the same name. In each generation they moved to oppose the movement of God happening under their nose. As prophet, Messiah, and church all arose, no Herods but gods were tamed. The first is the Herod when Jesus was born, the one who is called the Great. So named for the buildings he came to adorn, the temple and cross and state. But great does not stop to his temper extend. This Herod would slaughter his child or his friend to keep what he had right up unto the end. This hardly great reprobate. The second's the Herod they called Antipas, who severed the Baptist's head. The son of the first to whom Pilate would pass first right to see Jesus dead. This Herod discoursed his wife just to pursue his dead brother's widow despite much ado. This Henry intrigued on his stepdaughter too, and served till martyred poor James when he cut off his head. They picked up some prophecies which he misread, declaring himself as Messiah instead. Delusions his death would tame. So those are we've heard many of the kind of, for lack of a better term, villains of the New Testament, right? The villains of the gospel story we've heard, but we have not heard about one. We're the big one. The one who is in the very creed. We recite in our creed that our Lord was crucified under one individual, Pontius Pilate. And we are meant to feel all sorts of pity for him, aren't we? He seems like such a nice feller. What a lie. What a lie. Yeah, let's hear a little bit about Pontius Pilate, shall we? When starting off his tenure as Judean procurator, the equite Pontius Pilate showed some interest as dictator. He marched his legions into town, shield-bearing Caesar's visage, in violation of their law, forbidding any image. The crowd demanded their removal. Pontius feared a riot. No less than death would move them, and so acquiesced Pilate. Then sanitation in Jerusalem grabbed his attention. He built an aqueduct, but even that brought him contention. He opened up a temple vault and took the funds he needed to build his project, letting all objections go unheeded. When once again the crowd amassed, a boy who did revive it, sent soldiers fast to beat that mass and teach the fear of Pilate. Now come we to the trial of our noble Lord and Savior, where Pilate shows a caution that for him was a behavior. To find and kill Messiahs was their current Roman mission. So why pretend that doing so was some act of submission? He made the temple leadership complicit and defied it. To take the blame, should crowds regain their hate for Pontius Pilate? So that leads us out of the New Testament period, and outside of the New Testament period, there was a movement of the church, a history of the church, and there is actually way more songs that cover this on the YouTube channel that I have, if you are interested. There's some more history of the church, but we have about 1,500 years now of ups and downs, of ins and outs, of people getting along and not getting along, until the Reformation starts to happen, and there is a real divide between the unified Catholic Church and all sorts of groups who were starting to decide that they didn't like being ruled from afar in church land. And that eventually hit the British Isles under the reign of Henry VIII. And that's when we began our little journey as a church in the Anglican tradition. When Henry VIII decided to move on from the very Catholic reign of Aragon, the Pope refused an annulment to grant so ecclesiastic power, and he did so grant. Supremacy unleashed without apology gave birth to Anglican ecclesiology. wax and wane, we were Protestant, Catholic, and Protestant again, till the Act of Uniformity of Parliament, and Elizabeth were 60 years of settlement. Plus common prayer students of philology, which fostered Anglican ecclesiology. From Elizabeth I down to Charlie II, it was Caroline Divine where the churches moved by upholding of the truth and tradition tells, and it argued that reason has a place as well. This emphasis on reason and theology defines our Anglican ecclesiology. The push and pull between high and low made a number of offshoot denominations grow, but that over time distracted the future lay in the theology virtue of a middle way. This middle way is more than terminology, pluralizing Anglican ecclesiology. The Age of Revolution left the church as a single word communion in a complex switch, but that independent provinces could recognize that conferences and language would fraternize. This nebulous and other primatology sustained our Anglican ecclesiology. In modern times, there's some remorse that we're barreling towards another church divorce, but opposite opinions struggling to conform for all Anglicans of every age has been the norm. So, when you get to be you, and I get to be me, we are living Anglican ecclesiology. When you get to be you, and I get to be me, we are living Anglican ecclesiology. So Anglicanism has always had this kind of push and pull between the crown and all. And Henry VIII's appetites definitely got us onto got the ball rolling for us. But there needed to be more than that for a church to really survive. Right? It couldn't just be one monarch's desire to behead a bunch of ex-wives. Right? There had to be more. We were very, very, very fortunate, though. He had within his ranks, he had a servant who would come to basically form the Anglican everything. His name was Archbishop Thomas Cranmer. When Henry sought to see to love the church, he needed clerics with open minds and supple spines to bend without his stairs. There rose up one who would become his chief doctrinal planner, that often by the unoffending church bending clerical Archbishop Thomas Cranmer, excusing Henry's appetites, where that book were acolytes, the often bending unoffending church bending clerical Archbishop Thomas Cranmer. He set the task to take the massive liturgies and translate within a book of common prayer the Latin rites to operate. His homilies and codify his meanings and his manner. That church reforming rites, reforming court reforming doctrine, Archbishop Thomas Cranmer. These formulaic texts he left, without him we have been bereft. The church reforming rites, reforming court reforming doctrine, Archbishop Thomas Cranmer. When Mary rose to power, his luck at last had finally finished. Imprisoned and forced to recant, the star had quite diminished. But Mary was still out for blood, his burning station banner. That pricked and hand claiming for the Margaret Bishop Thomas Cranmer. That hand outside his guilty name, he thrust first in a roaring flame. The pricked and hand claiming for the Margaret Bishop Thomas Cranmer. That pricked and hand claiming for the Margaret Bishop Thomas Cranmer. So he wrote the Book of Common Prayer, the first and second Book of Common Prayer. He also wrote the entire Book of Homilies, which is a very, very long book of very, very long homilies. He gives us our doctrine as Anglicans. At the very back of the Book of Common Prayer, though, there is a collection, a list of ideas. They're called articles of religion. And actually, you're all going to notice in your pews the little small books, the Book of Common Prayers. Let's do this right, shall we? Let's do this right. Where's mine? You'll notice the Book of Common Prayer. At the back, you're going to find on page 698, the Articles of Religion. We are now going to go through all 39 of them musically. I encourage you to follow along in the book. When Thomas Cranmer came to write our texts, he found himself in a unique position to codify his very own contexts, which now we call articles of religion. And by four resurrects and ascension, both have lays out in reading the spirit preceding that classical mode of contention. 6 lays out in scripture, it is pictured, it can, and ever proper. Then 7 declares the Old Testament, spirit is a piece of morality stopper. In 8 we all read that we use the 3 creeds of the nations, apostles, and Nicene. In 9 we all find that my sin is of mine until ancient in his paleo-see. Our free will condition is 10 proposition, 11 faith justification. 12 deals with good works, 15 disclose with purpose, but high is prerogation. Enters in Christ without sin, no man is not man of this is. 16 then as it comes in, what is more than God of things. 17 is we read is a Calvinist creed on election and predestination. 17 the name of the hope for obtaining eternal salvation. 19 is your picture with God and scripture with references passable strain. In 20 we see the church authority will not hold with scripture betrayed. Then there comes 21 which passes upon and defines we find laboratory. But within 22 with its anti-world humor, Israeli saints and purgatory. 23 not a global days but apostles and minister to congregations. 24 says the tongue of what's ended with so should be understood without translations. To sacraments thrive, we get 25 just states and proportions. 25, 26, the spiritual ways are unworthy of ritual descriptions. The birth into heaven is in 27, baptism is regeneration. 28, the Lord's Supper with bread and the cup of rest and transubstantiation. Both those who say sign in by 29 and no way for missing the presence. Both various reception of both conception of one, there's no more than absence. 31 is discerning and answering here and affirming for single location. 32 was not wearing to let our priest Mary and regularly in their vocation. 33 is the plea from the people you see if the church has allowed its edition. 34 offers more local rights than before for upholding the church's tradition. Okay. 1 second. 35 is the high for homilies, 536 is saints we take on to pray in the goals of contagion of church and a big but in different 17 power is the picture of Romans and signs of his so ownership 3 to 3 38 is a biblical call this year already done 39 is condition of swearing. There in the book, towards the back, take a look, because this list is quite long, not to mention this song. And thank goodness they're both of them over. Thank you. Woo! What fool decided to write this nonsense? The final piece that I am offering today is something that actually points back to that section that we jumped over to get to Anglicanism. So when the Emperor Constantine allowed for Christianity to become an actual religion that could be practiced in the Roman Empire, there became a bit of a problem because there was all sorts of different ways of being a Christian at that point. So they needed to call a council. They needed to determine who and what they were universally so that they would be recognized by the rest of the empire. Unfortunately, that led to all sorts of disagreements. So great was the contention that there is a legend about the Council of Nicaea that St. Nicholas, Santa Claus, punched somebody in the face. That's how much the debate over how to describe the Trinity became. And for council after council after council for the next several hundreds of years, we spent arguing over what the best way, what the clearest way, what the true way to define and articulate the Holy Trinity would be. These were called the Trinitarian controversies. Now, most of that stuff is gone. Most of it does not matter to us today. So you will almost be guaranteed whenever you hear a priest talk about the Trinity that we will say something that was at one point a heresy. That's what it is to be the very model of a modern Trinitarian. I am the very model of a modern Trinitarian, hurdled by the balance waved by history and contrarians, but armed with endless of metaphors and simile to easily describe the most complex of heaven's mysteries. Like God is water, ice and steam, the different states of H2O. A shamrock, clover, trillion more, other three-leaf plants you know. An egg, a flame, an apple, anything made of three elements. Or any other three-in-one occurrence one can supplement. So when you hear some preaching on the Sunday of the Trinity, you'll likely hear it pick up what was classically a heresy. But why articulating God the way you Trinitarian when it's the very model of a modern Trinitarian? Adoptionistic Jesus was a man who God adopted him. Apollinaris said it was the mind of Christ that dwelt within. The Arians denied the whole idea of Christ's divinity. Well, no statistics made it indicate the physicality. The pneumomaticians raise their qualms about the Spirit's grace. The monophysicists remove sweet Jesus from our human race. While monothelistists allowed that he was human on one half, reducing incarnation to some underfinished substance gap. Historians say Jesus was the union of the flesh and bricks. Rebellions ignore the personhood of God's mysteriousness, while Lucy's heresies were shunned at times as antiquarian. They found their way into the thoughts of modern Trinitarians. Within his creed, great Athanasius told us what we don't believe. With lots of wiggle room for explanations he could not conceive. And in that fertile territory, modern preachers run our race, reducing the complexity of God to something commonplace. We do it to appease our time's most frustrating quality. The need to know has left the world resistant to God's mystery. This ancient understanding is more than divine arithmetic. The 3 and 1 and 1 and 3 is not some great dogmatic trick. So if you hear me preaching on the Sunday of the Trinity, and if you hear me refute what was classically a heresy, I'm just articulating God in ways utilitarian because I am a model of a modern Trinitarian. We are very blessed to have them come next week, so I hope that you're all able to make it out for that as well. And if you would like to hear more Topsy-Turvy Theology, there's some numbers that I did not do this afternoon. You can find
them on the Topsy-Turvy playlist on Father Ken McClure on YouTube. So you can look up Father Ken McClure, and I got a whole list of them there, so feel free, enjoy. Thank you once again for coming and for supporting Youth Haven in this